virtualization may seem like a very complicated universe because there's a lot going on. Here I'm going to be trying to and attempting to clarify some of the key components of virtualization. And I'm also going to try and demonstrate to you a couple of different pieces of virtualization and what they're about. Let's take a look for a minute. First of all, virtualization allows you to take physical hardware, whatever your physical hardware is. Let's say it is a Dell server, or it's a HP server, whatever the case is, or maybe it's a desktop. Okay? It takes your physical hardware and the physical hardware components such as CPU and RAM and disk and network. That's really what I'm talking about when I say physical hardware. I'm talking about these physical components. So it'll allow you to take your physical hardware, all of these components, multiple processors, lots of RAM, lots of disk, and your network components, and it will basically add a virtualization piece to it that is known as a hypervisor. Hypervisor's responsibility is to take those physical components, thus the processor, the RAM, the disk, and the network cards, and virtualize them so that they can be shared among multiple virtual machines. Now, hypervisor comes in a couple of flavors, if you will. There's a type 1 hypervisor and a type 2 hypervisor. And the difference is rather simple. The difference between the two hypervisors is that a type 1 hypervisor installs on bare metal. And what bare metal means is that a type 1 hypervisor will install right on top of the hardware. Does not require, so a type 1 hypervisor installs on bare metal, okay? Has its own OS, all right? Type 1 hypervisor has its own operating system, usually Linux, but not always, right? Then there's a type 2 hypervisor. Type 2 hypervisor installs as an application on Linux or Windows, or perhaps some other OS or another OS. All right, so type 1 hypervisor, type 2 hypervisors. And I'm going to show you examples of both kinds. I'm going to show you example of a type 1 and a type 2 hypervisor. Now, XenServer, Citrix XenServer, is a type 1 hypervisor. It installs on bare metal, and it has a Linux-based operating system that it installs on. I'll show you a hypervisor. I'm going to give you an example of Oracle VirtualBox, which is a free type 2 hypervisor. It installs on top of Linux and Windows, and it installs as an application and allows you to add virtual machines to it, and I'll show you what that is like as well. So once you have a hypervisor, whichever kind of hypervisor you have, whether it's a type 1 or a type 2, it doesn't really matter. Whatever kind of hypervisor you have, on top of that, you will have your virtual infrastructure. Okay? This is where you will have your VMs, right? This is where you're going to have your VMs installed on top of this. Okay? Now, what is the big difference you would think between the type 1 hypervisor, okay, between the type 1 hypervisor and the type 2 hypervisors? Well, there's several major differences. Okay? There's several major differences in practice, and there are several major differences and limitations in practicality. For example, a type 1 hypervisor is going to be a lot more meant for the enterprise. Okay? It's meant to allow you to work in a production environment in enterprise. A type 2 hypervisor is really not is really meant for local or dev type environments. It's really not meant for the enterprise. Now, there is a caveat to this rule. It's a very basic one. If you're running a really old operating system, such as Windows NT 4.0, I don't know why you would run that, but if you're running a very old operating system, maybe a Type 2 hypervisor like Oracle VirtualBox can sit on your desktop on top of Windows or on top of Linux, and you may want to run NT4 on it. Because when NT4 was released, the resource requirements were so low that we are far beyond those resource requirements in our desktops today. When NT4 was released in 1997, the minimum amount of RAM required to run it was 4 meg, not gig. 16 or 32 meg was great. So, and it only required about 500 megs of disk space to install. So the requirements were very, very low. So to get something like an NT4 system running on your Type 2 hypervisor may not be a big issue, especially if you're developing or testing. Now, local development environments, even for the newer systems, Windows Server 2012, Linux-based systems like Red Hat, Enterprise Linux, version 6, or CentOS version 7, or any other environments, if you're using it for the purposes of local and only on your desktop for development purposes, there's nothing wrong with it. You could use it and develop it and work with a Type 2 hypervisor on your own laptop or desktop without any issues for a long time. The problem comes, or the challenge comes, when you want to take that virtual environment and you want to allow dozens or hundreds or even 5 or 10 people to access that environment and run enterprise applications. What ends up happening is that the physical hardware that you would have, your virtual environment in would probably be meant for a desktop. If you're using a Type 2 hypervisor and you're running a local development environment, the reason you cannot take it to the enterprise or allow dozens, tens, 5, 10 people to access it simultaneously and use it in the production environment is because you will have limitations on the physical hardware. And what I mean by that is you will not have as much processing, RAM, disk, and networking power as you would on a server class machine. For example, today, it's rare, well, if ever, do you see quad processor desktop machine. I don't think I've ever seen one. I'm sure you can custom build it, but I've never seen one. I've never seen a quad processor laptop. Maybe they're coming, maybe they exist, but I haven't seen one. You know, you're not going to see a laptop that has hundreds of gigs of RAM, or perhaps even terabytes of RAM. I'm sure it's possible. I haven't seen desktops with that capability either. Same thing with the disk space, same thing with the networking capability of having a desktop have several network cards that are high speed. So there are many reasons why you would not be able to take something that it was created and built for the Type 2 hypervisor and created in the Type 2 hypervisor and take it into production inside of an enterprise. You can, however, using virtualization environment, you can take your virtual machine from your desktop and you can move it to an enterprise-ready Type 1 hypervisor such as XenServer. You can do that. And what happens with that is, since it is going to be a Type 1 hypervisor, the assumption is that it will be running on server class hardware. And I know I keep saying this server class hardware business, and just to clarify, when I say server class hardware, I'm really talking about the capability of lots of resources that can be on it. Lots of resources in terms of RAM, processor, disk, and network. Network distribution components. I mean, there's a lot of network and disk distribution, network and disk distribution environments, cloud capability. I can go on, but really what I'm talking about here is the capability of, when I say server class hardware, I'm really referring to the fact that you're able to do a lot more on that machine than you can on a desktop. Let me give you an example. Of what Oracle VirtualBox looks like, which is a Type 2 hypervisor. Then I will show you XenServer, which is a Type 1 bare metal hypervisor. So I've got Oracle VirtualBox right here. Okay, I've already got it installed. You can download it from the web for free. It doesn't cost anything. I'm going to click New over here. It's asking me what kind of operating system do I want to install and what do I want to call the virtual machine. So I can just specify that I want to call the virtual machine, I'm going to say box 01. And I'm going to make this a Linux box. I'm going to make this a Red Hat 32-bit box. I'm going to click Next. I'm going to allocate a gig of RAM to it. I can click Next. And I can specify that I want to create a new virtual hard disk that's going to be 8 gigs in size, right there. Click Create. I'm going to click Next. Click Next. I'm going to click Create, and it created this virtual machine for me. Now, when I go to Settings, and I go over to go over to Storage, and I change my virtual disk to the CentOS DVD right here, and I go over to General, and I click OK, and I start this. As soon as I start this, the window will come up and it will begin to load whatever's on that DVD. Okay, whatever's on that ISO file, here it is beginning to load my virtual machine. And it's going to let me install, CentOS Linux. All right? It's just telling me about the kernel that's required, but I'm not really worried about that. But this is really how the installation of a virtual machine would go inside of a Type 2 hypervisor. It allows you to create a virtual machine. It allows you to begin building one, and then once it's built, you can begin to use it. Okay? Now, a Type 2 hypervisor, this is a Type 2 hypervisor. A Type 1 hypervisor, let me take you to that. Here I've got XenCenter, but before I get to that, I want to show you something. I have a physical Dell server. Okay? I have a physical Dell server. And on my physical Dell PowerEdge 1950 server, I've got 4 gigs of RAM on that box, and I've got 2 73 gig drives on that box. I already have the installation of XenServer ready to go. I want to show you what it's like. So here's a XenServer install. I'm just going to press Enter so that it can begin installing. And if you look over there, it's going. It really can't see it. It's off the screen. But it'll come up in a second here. I am using what is called the Dell Remote Access Controller. The Dell Remote Access Controller allows me to see a video feed of a server that's located remotely. And I'm able to get a live video feed of what's happening on that server as it's happening. So I'll show you how easy it is to install XenServer. It's really nothing more than a next finish kind of. All you have to do is you have to know what you want to name the server. You have to know what IP address you want to assign to the server, and pretty much you're done after that. It's very easy to work with. The installation is very easy to deal with. It will install XenServer, and once it's done installing, all you have to do is you have to connect to it, and I'll show you how that's done. So here it is. It's asking me what kind of keyboard I want. So I'm going to select that I want the US QWERTY keyboard. And then it's looking for products. And it's going to say the setup tool is going to install XenServer. I'm going to say yes, that's what I want to do. And I'm going to accept the end user license agreement. I'm going to perform a clean installation. I don't want to upgrade. All right. And I'm going to select that I want to allow thin provisioning, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So I'm going to click OK there. I'm going to use local media to install this. And I'm not going to install any supplemental packs. I'm going to skip the verification of the media. I'm going to supply it the root password, which is a password that I will use to enter the system initially. I specify which network card I'm going to use to install this thing on for management purposes. I'm going to supply it with a static IP configuration. So there's my IP address that I will assign to this box. There is my gateway. And I'm going to call this server access host 01. My DNS server is going to be that. And America is where I'm at. Los Angeles time zone. I'm going to use NTP. I'm going to use poolntp org, like so. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to install XenServer. That's it. So all I really needed to know, really, was the name of my host. The name of my host, I called it XS host 01, and the IP address and the DNS and the subnet mask, what I would need to know in order to install really any server platform. So this is a type 1, okay? This is a type 1 hypervisor. So when I'm going to close out of that, I'm going to close out of that. And once this is done installing, I'm going to ask it to be rebooted, and then I'll be able to log on to it using a tool like this. This is called XenCenter. And XenCenter allows me to connect to multiple Citrix Xen servers. I already have 2 of them installed right over here. Okay. And it allows me to connect to storage. It allows me to build virtual machines, really whatnot. It allows me to do everything I need to do inside of the virtual environment. Now, a few other things that I want to point out to you associated with this. And I want to show you something here. So what has virtualization done for us? Well, let's think about this for a minute. Let's think about I'm going to call this our host. I'll call this our VM host. Now, VM host is something like a Xen server. Okay? I'm talking about a type 1 hypervisor. Okay? Talking about a type 1 hypervisor. And I'm going to call this Xen server. And this is my VM host. I'm going to call this thing VM host. Maybe I attach an 01 to it so that we can easily identify which one is which. And I'm going to move this over here. Cheat a little bit on the typing. Right? So this host right here is going to have multiple virtual machines attached to it, obviously. 9.9 times out of 10, there are multiple virtual machines that are attached or that are running on a single host. I would say, obviously, because otherwise, what is the essential point? If there's a one-to-one relationship between the virtualization host and the virtual machine, you're kind of going to negate some of the benefits or some of the reasons why you would want a virtual environment. You want to share hardware resources. You want to share the RAM, share the processor, share the disk, share the networking components. So I'm going to say that this is going to be a Windows Server 01. It's going to be a Linux Server 01. Maybe call this thing File Server. Call this thing Web Server. Maybe call this thing a Oracle Database Server 01. Right? So let's say these are the VMs that I have in this particular instance that I have attached to this particular host. Now, what kinds of things go on that will require me to, well, panic, if you will, should these machines fall apart. I'm going to kind of share with you what happens in the physical universe. Okay, so in the physical world, if these machines were installed on physical hosts, so first of all, if these were installed on physical hosts, we would have 3 separate physical servers, correct? One for the Windows web server, one for the Linux file server, another one for the Oracle database server. That would be 3 separate physical machines. Right now what's happening is each of these servers are eating up a portion of the resources off of this XenServer Type 1 hypervisor. Right? So let's say that this XenServer has, and this is not unusual, I'm not making this up, let's say this thing has 512 gigs of RAM, very, very normal today to have half a terabyte or even a terabyte or even up to as much as 2 terabytes of RAM or near that is really not that hard to believe. And let's say that this server has access to a storage on your network with several terabytes of disk space. Okay? And let's say that we have 8 network cards associated with this, 8 network cards, 8 physical network cards. And let's say that we have 8 processors with 8 cores each. Okay? Basically 64 virtual processors. Right? That is not unheard of. Nothing that I said here is anything strange. So if this is the case, what ends up happening is each one of these virtual machines, okay, each one of these virtual machines will use up a portion of these resources to satisfy whatever is going on here. So, coming back to what I was talking about, if these were on physical hosts, what kinds of problems would I have? Well, let's see. Think about when I would need to upgrade. Okay? If I would need to upgrade, let's say this, if I need to upgrade this Windows server from server 2008 R2 to server 2012 R2, what would I need to do in the physical universe? I would have to stop using this machine, perform the upgrade, and then start using it again. And also, if something was to go wrong, I would have to worry about reinstalling and bringing it back to the way it was. That is a very complicated thing to do, believe it or not. To ask someone to do this takes a lot of planning and a lot of time and a lot of coordination. Okay? So upgrade would be upgrade of any kind. What if I asked to upgrade, let's say it wasn't from Windows Server 2008 R2 to Windows Server 2012. What if it was to upgrade the hardware? What if I wanted to upgrade double the RAM or double the disk or move it over to a faster processor or a faster server? What if I wanted to decommission this server and move it over? And that goes true for any one of these, not just the Windows server, but also the Linux server and also the Oracle database server. Upgrade can be a major, major issue. Okay? Upgrade software, upgrade hardware can really wreak havoc on production. Okay? Also, so let's say it's not the upgrade process. I'm going to say upgrade, migrate. The other issue can be, what if I want to increase, what if I want to add nodes? Okay, so I want to make it into a distributed environment. What if I wanted to add more machines to this web server? Right? What if one web server wasn't enough? What if I wanted to add to it? Have a web server cluster, add network load balancing, and whatever I need to do to make this web server available a little bit more, introduce high availability features. That's a big problem. Once I've installed this a certain way on the physical box, I'm kind of stuck. I have to, again, think about downtime. I have to, again, think about what I need to do in order to accommodate this particular change or shift. Another simple thing that may sound simple, how about the whole backup and recovery situation? Okay. How do I accommodate backing up and recovery on these physical boxes? Well, the way we've done it forever and ever, you can put the backups on tape. Perhaps you can put the backup on another machine, but it is nonetheless a very, very important topic that needs to be discussed and managed. Virtual environments offer me a lot more room, if you will, and a lot more to deal with and a lot more to work with when it comes to these types of issues, namely upgrade issues, clustering issues. I have a lot of options that I can work with. So in the physical environment, I have a lot to worry about. All right, I'm just going to leave it this way. In the physical environment, I have a lot to worry about. So let's say that I'm going to take this here. All right, let's say I'm going to take this here, and I'm going to mimic it right over here. All right, and I'm going to say that all these servers over here, these are all O2s. I'm just going to say that these are, I've got a web server O2, and I've got a file server O2, and so on. Right. I'm just going to move this 2 over here. It is, by the way, very easy, right? It is very, very easy for me to move these things around. Now, the capacity of this server, if I'm dealing with a type 1 bare metal box, okay, I can really use more than what is available to me right over here. Believe it or not, instead of a virtualization environment, I can overcommit all of these resources. Not that it's recommended or suggested, but I can. I can overcommit the RAM. I can overcommit the disk space, the network capabilities, and the processing power. I can allocate, intentionally, I can allocate a terabyte of RAM to the collective VMs that I've got, even though I only have 512 physical gigs of RAM. It's not good practice, but I can do it, especially if it's a temporary need. It may fill an important temporary need. So I can do something like this in the virtual universe. I can simply take this right over here. Okay, I can simply take this right over here. And while this machine is running, I can just move it right there. Honestly, it is really that simple. I know, I did a copy and paste, or cut and paste. But in the virtualization universe, it is quite that simple. I can take a virtual machine that is running on one host, and I can immediately move it over to another host. And the people that are using that VM don't even feel that anything happened. Your question is going to be, why would you want to do something like this, right? Why would you want to do something like this? Well, the reason you want to do something like this is because maybe this particular host maybe is getting old. Or maybe you want to decommission it. Or maybe you want to put other VMs over here. Who knows? Whatever your reasons are. In the physical universe, okay, in the physical universe, doing these kinds of things to be able to take a virtual machine, to be able to take a physical machine and move it, or just migrate it. I was talking about migration. To migrate a physical machine from one machine to another, to take a Windows server, for example, a Windows web server, from one physical machine and move it over to another is a really, really big challenge. And it's usually met with some very, very confusing circumstances. And here's what I mean. Once you move that web server, let's say it's a Windows web server, or let's say it's a Linux file server, it doesn't really matter. Once you move it from old hardware to new hardware, or from old machine to new machine, what ends up happening is once it's moved to the new environment, you don't know if everything succeeded or if everything moved. And inevitably, something very important didn't move over. And you're going to have to reconfigure, you'll have to hack the registry, you'll have to do some reinstallations. There'll be something wrong inevitably. So that's not the case here. When you move over environments that are inside of the virtual environment or the virtual infrastructure, and when you move it, for example, maybe I should change this name here. When you move it, for example, from VM host 01 to VM host 02, right over here, okay, it's really not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal. As long as both of these hosts are running, you're able to move them over. Inside of Citrix XenServer environment, there's something called XenCenter that will allow you, it's a tool that will allow you to manage all of your Xen servers under one umbrella or underneath one roof. So you can manage this box right here, and you can manage this box right here, and many other boxes for that matter, from one central location. And XenCenter is capable of managing multiple environments simultaneously without any issues. Okay? So it's a very, very powerful tool. Type 1, this XenServer is a Type 1 hypervisor. Other examples of Type 1 hypervisors include VMware and Microsoft Hyper-V. Okay. VMware vSphere environment and Microsoft's Hyper-V environment are both Type 1 environments. Now, VMware does have Type 2 products, and Microsoft also has Type 2 hypervisor products that run on top of operating systems. Okay? So XenServer, Type 2 hypervisor, virtual machines. I wanted to give you a little bit of a flavor and understanding of what virtual machines are and what virtualization is, what some of the benefits of virtualization are to get your feet wet, as they say. Very glad you're here.
Start with new learning now.